It's funny. We have these incredible devices in our pockets that can tell us exactly where to go. But in the process, I think we might have forgotten a really fundamental skill: how to actually read a map. And it's about so much more than just getting from A to B. It's about really understanding the world around you.
So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by learning to see the world from a completely new angle. Then, we'll dive into the secret language that all maps use. After that, we'll figure out how to pinpoint your exact spot on the globe. We'll put all those skills together, and then we'll get to the big question. Why does any of this still matter? All right, first things first. The single biggest leap you have to make to read a map is to completely change your perspective. Seriously, it's all about learning to see things from a whole new point of view. Okay, think about it like this. If you're standing on the street looking at a house, you see the side view, the doors, the windows, the paint color, but a map doesn't see it that way. A map shows you the plan view, as if you were a bird flying way up high looking straight down at the roof. And that right there is the magic trick of every map. It takes our big, complicated 3D world with all its hills and buildings, and it flattens it out onto a 2D surface, all thanks to that simple bird's eye view. So, we've got the perspective down. But how do maps pack in so much detail without just becoming a huge, cluttered mess? Well, they use a kind of secret language, a visual code. Instead of writing out the words, "there's a big forest here," or "watch out for the train tracks," maps use symbols. They're basically a visual shorthand, little pictures that keep the map clean, simple, and super easy to read, once you know the language, of course. So, how do you learn that language? Well, that's what the key or the legend is for. You should think of it as the dictionary for your map. It's the part that tells you exactly what every little icon and color actually means. And what's so cool about this is how efficient it is. I mean, look at this. A simple wavy line can represent a massive winding river. One tiny little tree icon stand in for a forest that's thousands of acres wide. It's pretty brilliant. Okay, so now we can look at a map and know what we're seeing. But how do we tell someone exactly where something is? Well, that's where grids and directions come in.
Most maps you'll see are covered in a grid. Finding a location is a lot like playing the game Battleship. You just find the letter along the bottom or top edge, and then find the number along the side. The one golden rule to remember is you always go along the corridor before you go up the stairs. So letter first, then number. You'll find the park in square A3. Simple as that.
But even more basic from a grid are the 4 cardinal directions. And on almost every map ever made, the rule is the same. North is at the top. Once you know that, everything else just falls into place. South is at the bottom, east is on your right, and west is on your left. And hey, here's a great little trick if you're ever turned around in the real world. Just remember that the sun always rises in the east and sets in the west. It's a natural compass people have been using for thousands of years to get their bearings. All right, theory time is over. We've got our basic tools. We understand perspective, symbols, grids, and directions. Now, let's put it all together and see what we can figure out by looking at a real map of South Africa. So first up, let's just look at some basic info. Here we have South Africa's 9 provinces and their capitals. Now, this kind of information, stuff about borders and cities made by people, shows up on a very specific kind of map.
And that brings us to a super important point. Maps can tell different kinds of stories. A physical map shows you the natural world, the mountains, the deserts, the rivers. But a political map, like one showing provinces, tells you about the man-made world, countries, borders, and cities.
So now, when we look at that map of South Africa, we can actually start to read it. We can see it's right there at the southern tip of Africa. We can see the blue, which we know means water, but now we can identify the Atlantic on the west and the Indian Ocean on the east. And those different colors for the provinces, they're not just to look nice. They make it really easy to see where one province ends and the next one begins. Okay, we've covered the how. We know the basics of reading a map. But I'm sure you're thinking, I've got GPS on my phone that tells me exactly when to turn. Why should I care? It's a fair question. Well, here's why it still matters. Reading a map teaches you something a GPS never can. It's called spatial literacy. Instead of just blindly following an arrow, you start to build a mental model of the world. You understand how places connect, how far apart they are, and the scale of it all. You're not just seeing the next turn, you're seeing the entire landscape. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. The next time you're following that little blue dot on your screen, you'll get where you're going for sure, but what do you lose along the way? Maybe we lose a little bit of our sense of direction, or our sense of place, or maybe just that amazing feeling of knowing for ourselves exactly where we are in the world.